Hello and welcome to my video where I talk about things that I find fascinating, and I hope you do too. In today's video we have quite an interesting topic, so I wanted to talk a little bit about death. And my philosophy is that my will to live should come from the acceptance of my own death. And I don't exactly know where that thought came from, but it struck me as true. Its aim in my heart pierced something deep inside of me that I knew it to be the case. There was no other way for me to live except from the acceptance of my own death. And it's an interesting question, right? What does it mean to accept your own death? I think it's very much in synchrony with your will to live. It's not as if one comes before the other, but they live in harmony together, balancing out the scales of life. That's how I see it. And to further understand what that means, I think that our will to live has something to do with a personal righteousness. And I'm not talking about a divine righteousness in the religious sense. Maybe in the spiritual sense it could mean that way. But an aiming upwards that is loving and true and beautiful and honest and expressive of the internal you, the essence of who you are. If you are expressing that, then if you are no longer to express it, well, those actions that you did echo throughout all of eternity. And to me, that is quite interesting, right? I mean, when you look at it from a physics standpoint, time is obviously relative to the forces at play, but also there's an understanding of the temporal dimensions of organisms that is different than even the physical nature of time and how we experience it. And I think that there's a clue. There's a clue as to how death can play a role in our lives, because, what are we truly racing against? The clock. We can only do so much before we die. So what's the purpose? Maybe the purpose is to die, but to maximize our conscious experience in the meantime, is it to maximize our conscious experience, or is it to maximize simply the fruit that will come about from us striving towards greatness? Is it just the propensity towards genetic propagation? I'm not sure. It's an interesting question, to say the least. Death is something that doesn't necessarily scare me anymore, but it does scare me when I know I'm not living the way I should be. Isn't that interesting? It's when I've lost myself that I'm terrified of death. And I think that in there lies the key. I think many people have struggled because of this. It is as if they've lost something when they're not themselves. They've lost the will to live, but they are more anxious of death as well. That to me can't seem like a coincidence. There seems to be something infused with the goal-orientedness of humankind. Something deep within our emotions that allows us to accept death, not even because of religion. There are many people who have accepted death because they know that their Savior is there. And fair to them. I believe in somewhat the same. so I harbor no ill will against the religious folk, that's for sure. Though I prefer to consider myself as spiritual, though I don't mess around with it, that's for sure. It scares me. I'm not quite sure how to categorize the spiritual world, so I don't touch it. That is for the me that dies to deal with. And that kind of goes back to our understanding of time. If the physical body dies, well, what's left? The essence of our consciousness, if that's to be the case. And what does it experience? Perhaps it lives in a moment for all of eternity. The last moment. Perhaps your emotions. Perhaps something in you knows that if you were to die this very second, would your afterlife be meaningful? Would it be positive? That's something you truly have to ask yourself. And I think it's something that our biology is aware of in a way. Maybe not in a way that I'm suggesting, but definitely one that would suggest that we understand that how we feel can affect us after death. Because that's what I'm feeling personally, is that the actions that you take in a second can radically change the conscious experience after death, or during death even. And that's what I've grown to realize, that during positive experiences, and these usually aren't ones that are self-gratifying, not self-gratifying positive experiences, because those are a little different, but rather those of love, true love. And it doesn't have to be a romantic sense, though it can be. But usually if it's a romantic love, you really don't want to die. That is something you're not really focused on doing. And I would say you really don't want to. It's a different type of love. It's almost an agape love. A love of an ultimate love from God, if you will. A God figure. Whether it was created in your mind or created by a relationship with the divine is one for you to think about yourself. And what it is not really useful. It's the fact that it's there that is quite alluring. You know, recently I've been tapping in to this field of infinite love, if you will. And call me crazy, but I love it. I think it's great. And there are certain behavioral conditions that I can meet to feel this love. And as I've gotten older, it's gotten easier and easier. But I'm aware of what I do when I don't feel it. And it's not good. But for some reason, it's self-serving. But why isn't what is self-serving, at least immediately, not good enough to satiate death? Why is it sacrifice? Why is it giving? Why is it love that calms you? Not self-gratification. Maybe because it's wrong. And maybe, as complex as creatures as we are, we can actually innately understand that. And our emotions are a bit of an insight into how that works. I think as I get older, I realize just how weak I am. The stronger, the smarter, the better I get at this whole life thing, the more I realize just how fragile I am. But there's a piece in that that I find to be honestly amusing in a way. And currently it's 1 in the morning, and this is the best time to have these types of talks, right? Your will to live must come from the acceptance of your own death. What does death signify? The end of what? Is this life simply the first step in all eternity? That's a question you really need to ask yourself. Truly. Is this the first step in all eternity? For who? It can't be your personality or any of your subset personalities that lie within your unconscious. Those aren't what experience all of eternity. Then who does? What lies at the essence of a system? If the walls break down, there is no biological standard for the contents of your conscious experience, then what happens to those memories of you? Do they disappear? Do they stay stagnant in time? And do you stay stagnant in time? Would that be so bad if you did? Well, it depends on the contents of your memories the moment before you died. And if you got to the point of accepting your own death at that point, or perhaps it was too fast to do so, what then? Is it over? Is there nothingness? There is no nothing. There is only something. There was never at any point nothing. Maybe something that constituted what we would perceive as nothing, but there and then existed it. So that's something. There's an infinite amount of space in the universe. So that means there's 100% chance of something happening again, for humans to be created again, organisms to be created again. There's 100% probability of that happening because of the infinite space of the universe. Do we simply reincarnate with our memories being grasped by the organism that is most attuned to the patterns that we have set by our own memories? And does the cycle continue for all eternity, forever and ever? And does that new you use those memories, those contents of consciousness, to further enhance their experience? Is that maybe the cosmic evolution that characterizes us? Perhaps. It's all in theory, right? For what can we know? The more you learn, the more you realize that you understand nothing. Nothing at all. Some things you do understand. Like, I know this is a computer that I'm recording on. That's something, right? Well, it is. So what does that entail? Knowledge. Is that knowledge true? To humans, yes. That's the archetype we've given it. It's a computer. Is that what it actually is? I believe so. But still, in there lies an axiom. that we can't push further. It is the integrated information of the system that is a computer that falls under the computer category. But each of its tiny components is a subsystem in and of itself, and the interactions between them create what we know as a computer. So really, what we know as a computer is simply a conglomeration of intersubjective matrices that are combining and interacting at an astronomical level, at a macroscopic level, starting from a microscopic place. That's just a computer. Let's not even to mention my dynamics with the computer. How strange. Truly it is. I don't even know what I'm rambling on about at this point. We're on the deep end, brother. That's for sure. What is death? That's a tough question. How does one answer that? What is death? Is it the end of the beginning? The beginning of the end? Or is it simply a step throughout all of eternity? Those are questions that are so difficult to answer because you cannot know until you've experienced it. But one thing I will say is that it seems like this life is a dream. A good one at that. Personally, I love this dream. I don't mind it at all. I think it's very good, very healthy, filled with everything you could ever expect from a selfish, greedy, narcissistic, evolutionary trajectory. And will we continue to be selfish? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe death is a curse that we're supposed to break free from. Perhaps that's the end goal. Perhaps all of us currently are all sacrifices for the simple purpose of eventually overcoming it. To overcome death. Perhaps we already have. Perhaps it is not necessary. Perhaps the goal is harmony and synchrony with the patterns innate to the flourishing and positive experiences for organisms. What is that? Well, to some degree, it's the fundamental forces of nature. Perhaps we're vying for a synchrony between them again, innately, from the particles that make us up. Perhaps it's what we're vying for, just like moments before the Big Bang, all four fundamental forces were in synchrony with each other, in harmony. Perhaps all of them had the capacity for conscious awareness. And then a fraction of a fraction of a fraction times 1,000 fractions of a millisecond later, boom, it all came to be. And it was only in the next moment that it began to exist. But what does that mean? Time. That insinuates time. At a moment later. What does it mean to live for another moment? For the universe to exist after, for something to exist before. The Big Bang can't be the beginning. It's only an event, and one that's happening in this infinite void of who knows what. I mean, seriously, who knows what? And we're just a tiny little speck in it. And I think that is wherein lies the beauty, is that even though we are a speck, it seems to be that we are one of the only ones that get to experience it fully from a subjective perspective. Unless, of course, everything is conscious. But does an electron have emotions? Obviously not. There's nothing else to it besides its behaviors. But perhaps there is a fundamental awareness that exists in its internal potential states because it has an internal model of its infinite potentiality. Then perhaps that constitutes some level of integration that can maintain a system that allows for interaction. And maybe it is aware of that interaction, though not to a degree that any organism is. That's for sure. But we'll see how this whole life thing goes. I encourage you to live it out as you should, the way you know you should. Can't let anybody tell you. You can listen. Listening is one of the best things you could ever do. But I say that with caution, because you don't want to let others dictate your life, the one life you have. So listen. Self-reference. Analyze. And see if it's valuable. And fit it to where it is valuable. Make it circumstantial. How can this be valuable? And if you can't find a place to make that information valuable, then you've failed. You have to make it valuable. Make it circumstantial. In this circumstance, it would be valuable. Because listen, nothing holds no truth in it. That's what I will put out. And even if the truth in that statement lies in where you least expect it, it's still there. You just might have to twist it and conjoin it to fit the pieces correctly, but it is possible to do so. You know, I often say that truth should be your only delusion. And I still think that is the case. Because what even is truth, right? It's one of the questions that many philosophers still argue about. The nature of truth. Is it stagnant facts or a fluid dynamic that exists perpetually, forever unchanged, but changing constantly from the perspective of anybody who looks at it? There's like a veil that will forever close off the true essence of truth. Perhaps one day we will find it. Perhaps once death is no longer a concern. So, I thank you for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one. See you guys.